So to be able to print a 3D file, we have to use a program called a slicer that converts the file from whatever you downloaded to something that the 3D printer can read and create. So what you want to do first is go to Google and put in Dremel Print Cloud. And when you do that, it will be the first link there that you want to use. Then you want to sign in with Google. And you can see I have printed a bunch of things here. I'll run you through the process of how to print something of your own. So the first thing we want to do is say upload a file. We can drag a file in here, or we can choose it from a location on your Chromebook or your drive. It may be easier just to drag it in here from drive. You want to make sure that you have single file selected and not project. And so in my case, I'm going to choose a file from my 3D prints. And I will select this cool slug. So it will take a moment to upload. Some files will upload faster than others. Then you want to say save and go to my files, and you will see that it is listed here as an STL. An STL is not something that the printer will be able to print, and so that's the purpose of using this slicer. One of the nice features about this slicer is it does have a repair button, so you always want to hit the repair and leave all this as it is and just hit fix. And that's going to take care of any potential mistakes or problems that the 3D print would have before you print it and have a failed print. So we can see that it's now been renamed to the slug and these numbers repaired. So what we want to do now is go to actually we need to go to layout. And that's going to import that slug onto the deal here. And when we use this, oops, I zoomed in way too far. When we use this slicer, we can use the mouse to kind of spin around. I'm using the right clicker on my mouse. It may be different on your Chromebook. But there are going to be some features here that you can see and you can use. I can move the slug around, I can rotate it, and I can change its scale. When 3D printing something, we want it to be in as much contact with the build plate as possible. So, for instance, I am not going to rotate this slug like this because that would make a terrible print. And then notice how it's going through the bed. I would need to click on bed and center if I was to do that. I just make it a habit to click on bed and center anytime that I make a movement. But this would be a terrible way to try to print this slug. We want the slug touching the print plate as much as possible. So I'll try to get him back to being flat, and then we need to go on bed and center again. So now you can see this slug is touching the build plate pretty darn good. There are some prints that are going to be more difficult than others to have good build plate contact. If I was you, I would select a print that has a lot of round edges like this slug, not a ton of stuff sticking off into the air, and something that's going to have a lot of contact with that build plate. So if I do want to move the position of this, if I were printing multiple items or trying to fit different things, I could do that using these arrows. But I like putting things in the center. And then scale, we can change the scale. And I don't want to mess with X, Y, Z. What I would mess with is this one down here that says scale to whatever percent, because it will keep everything in the same what we call aspect ratio, so it will still look correct. If I were to change the percent on one of these other ones like that, you'll see that the slug got long and skinny and that everything else stayed the same. So I'm going to choose not to do that. I'm going to choose down here anytime I'm making a change to the size to use this scale 2% right here. So the biggest thing is recognize you can move it, rotate it, and scale it. I would not mess with any of these other buttons. You always want to hit on bed and center before you get ready to save and slice. So I'm happy with the way my slug looks and is going to come out. I am going to click save and slice. We do not want to change any of these settings. Just leave it alone. And we want to hit slice. Okay. Now we have this thing here called a G-code that is in progress. The 3D printer will not be able to print the STL, that STL, or that STL. The 3D printer will be able to print this G-code. And so this is the one that you want to move to your thumb drive for taking to the 3D printer. And the way you do that is simply hover over the name here. Again, make sure it's the G3, that's the G-code. Click that, and you'll see it comes to my downloads. And then I would be able to put that on the on the thumb drive and take it over to the 3D printer.